Hi, it's Musolini, the Merchant of Success. Welcome to Retirement Planning Method 2.0. I'm very happy for some people who are attending right now, who I know, people like Samantha, they are still in their early 20s, literally. And so they are very lucky to be accessing this kind of information at this stage. How I wish I had access to this information way back. It would have been a different situation for me right now. But either way, that's better late than never. So, and you requested for this topic. It's one of the most requested topics. Again, we look at clarity, mindset, strategies, skill set, and mastery. And when I say clarity, it's us being clear on the what and the why of this particular subject matter. Here are some physical realities of retirement. Number one, typically there is 90% decline in mental health. So again, these are things to bring to your attention so that you may pay attention indeed. Two is there is a 6% increase in illnesses. So that's why with the insurance companies, they want to know your age and all that. And of course, the older you are, the more premium required, because typically there's 6% increase in disease. Then there is also a 16% increase in problems with mobility and the performance of daily activities. So meaning sometimes people are feeling a little slower, their performance is a little slower. And again, not everyone, just saying across the board, the chances are much higher that there are challenges with mobility and performance of daily activities. So why is retirement planning important for us to be talking about in the first place? A couple of reasons. One, those who don't transition as well as they would like may experience a decline in health and well-being. Talking about decline and well-being, a research was made a couple of years ago in Uganda, and they discovered that for people who retire, they live on average 3 to 5 years. Think about that. They live for 3 to 5 years on average. Now, that is quite scary when you think about it, because it's not, when you think about the retirement age, it's about the age of 60. That's not so old in typical, in an ideal life, so to speak. But it's because certain things are missing, some of the things we'll be talking about, that really impacts them big time. Two is that retirees world over believe they were happier when they were working. So meaning you find people do not, one of the reasons that people pass on quicker is that they do not typically know how to live outside work, meaning they don't have life outside the original work they had before. And those who transition well, you find that as they built good support systems, engaged in physical activities, worked part-time or volunteered, meaning they built something to help them go and live beyond work. And those are the ones who actually even live longer, because then they have something of meaning outside work. Because there's someone who was telling me of this other former brilliant person who used to work in government in a big position, would wake up, go to the trading center, buy newspapers, come home, read them from first page to last page. And of course, in a couple of hours, the paper is done. And then what? So he couldn't live longer. So yeah, that's something for us to pay attention to. Indeed. So Justine is asking an excellent question, which I had actually not thought about, was please redefine retirement in terms of informal employment. Yeah, because when we say retirement, it's very clear when under formal employment, usually at a particular age, like 60, then you have to retire, meaning they are not going to allow you to be employed. So it's clear cut. Now, with informal employment, the way I would define that is that's when you typically decide to stop being very active in especially income generating activities, or whatever was giving you a sense of income, not a sense, but a source of income. So there are people you find, they run businesses and then they say, no, at this stage, I'm going to retire and my son will be taking care of that, or I'm going to hire people to do this. I'm just going to go to my farm or something like that. So that's how it's like in informal employment. So for informal employment, that's when you voluntarily, you yourself, you voluntarily. Oh, Lord, I was just eating the words. You voluntarily choose to say, okay, at this stage, I'm done. Okay, so Justin says, thanks. While for formal employment, it may be voluntary or involuntary. When I say voluntary, you may decide to retire before time. But most times it's involuntary in that, hey, before you know it, you're 60. And please, the good news is we have some 20-year-olds, most likely the youngest on the call right now is Benjamin, whom I know is 18 years old. Please, I used to look at people in their 40s. I'm like, that's so old. I'm 43. I'm like, wow, I just whizzed by from 20s where I used to look at people in their 40s as too old. Now I'm 43. So please, some of us who are not that old in quotes, please note, time flies by. So just pay extreme attention so that you can be different indeed. Okay. Now let's talk about mindset. Here are 5 mindsets for retirement planning. Number 1, positive outlook, new beginnings. It's not the end of something, it's the beginning of something new. You know, sometimes when you look at retirement or ending anything and you think about it as closure of something, then you might look back and, you know, with either regret or some emotions that are not that very positive. But if you instead say, you know what, I'm looking forward to my retirement with glee on my face and excitement on my face, talking about which I need to take note of something. It's something big I want to communicate. And that is a different way to think about retirement. And let me. So positive outlook is extremely key to look at your retirement as new beginnings. The second mindset is the proactive mindset, taking initiative, not just sitting and waiting and folding your arms for a certain package from government. There's, especially in systems that are not organized, this business of just waiting for Big Brother to sort you out, meaning in this case, usually government. I've had so many stories that are really painful. That doesn't take away the responsibility for government. All I'm saying is it's a bigger reminder for all of us to take initiative, in that you take initiative as early as possible. That's something I should also add, because the only guarantee you have is you doing something or being something or starting whatever that thing you can start. And I'll be talking about that. And when I say taking initiative, for example, starting the savings early or starting that business early. The other mindset is the strategic mindset versus tactical mindset. So taking strategic actions that will guarantee a comfortable retirement. For example, this really stuck with me. I have a very good friend of mine I look up to him when it comes to finances. He's one of the people I look up to. I had him say this. I was working with a big organization and I was invited to do consulting and training for them. So we're seated having dinner. I must have been in my late 20s, possibly 29, latest 30, age of 30. And I had him say this. This is what stuck with me. And we are in the same age bracket. He said, you know, I must have been at least 100 acres, 100 acres of trees. You know, that is my retirement package. I was like, I didn't say anything, but it caught my attention. I was like, wow. So other people say retirement packages and they are waiting for their workplaces to create a package for them. So for you are creating your own package. I was like, what a great idea. So he's adopting both the proactive and the strategic, talking about which I should talk to him now and see how that is going. But he's definitely doing very well, at least in other aspects of financial. So you can see for him, he took a strategic mindset rather than just tactical. Tactical is just thinking short term, some things you can do now for a quick result, things you can do now for a quicker result. And there's a place for tactics also. It's not just a question of just always thinking strategy. You need to think of the now and the future. So I would encourage you to also think about the strategic mindset. The other mindset is urgency. If not now, then when? Some of you, I shared with you the story of how a good friend of mine shared with me the idea of planting, trees many years ago and 15 years ago. Not 15 years ago, which would take 15 years, and I looked at it as very long, and it's now 13 years later, and I didn't plant those trees. I didn't act with a sense of urgency. So, now I would be talking of harvesting. So if there is one mindset that is extremely crucial, it is that urgency. You act now. I have another friend of mine. She was telling me how she had set up some small rooms that she was in her mid-30s. Yeah, mid-30s, I suppose. Yeah, mid-30s. So she was having a chat with her daughter. And the daughter was like, but mommy, these are just one-roomed units. What are they for? And then the mom, who is a friend, said, no, in my old age, I'll be just coming and collecting rent. So just wait and see. And it's incredible because as we speak, she's in her early 50s as we speak. And she's doing very well. She has an excellent international job. But you see, then she acted with a sense of urgency. She was proactive. She had a strategic mindset also. 5, refiring. I first heard this from one of our colleagues, Pamela. That's Pamela Elobo. I had her say, it's not retiring, it is refiring. I like that. You're refiring. You're not retiring, you're refiring. New cylinders, yeah? V8. Before you were on a V6, now you're V8. You're refiring them. You're being fired up again. You can start a new life at 60. There's Mama Maria. She has an organization in Mukono. I just need to remember what it is. It's a non-for-profit organization, Mukono. She's Belgian, if my memory serves me right. But this lady is in her 80s, but she has so much life in her. It's incredible. And if my memory serves me right, she kicked that off when she was in her 60s. and she's impacting lives. She's in her 80s, but she's impacting lives. She started at 60 something. So this idea of 60, you're going on the downward spiral of life. Why can't it be the upward spiral of life? The people who have started businesses and ventures at the age of 65, I believe the founder of Kentucky, if my memory serves me right. So, meaning one of the mindsets you need to have that I'm encouraging you to adopt is that you're not retiring, you are refiring, baby. Yes. And one of the strategies, which I was not planning to talk about, but one of the strategies, just to give you a heads up, just look at people like Mama Maria, or look for people who are fired up in their retirement and get to adopt their mindsets and strategies and tactics. Then you'll be ahead of the pack. Yeah, Emily is reminding us of the Chinese proverb that the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now. So let's go plant some trees. And when I say trees, does not have to be trees. It means whichever project you are thinking about. If you are thinking that it's too late, it's not, well, it was late then, it is okay now. It is better than you doing nothing. Three strategies for retirement planning. Okay, cool. Notice, thank you, Sarah. Sorry about that. Strategy one is the adventurer. Take risks and try new things. Start now, take strategic actions. So when we say adventurer, you see, the key thing is, having said that, of course, when I say take risks, you also have to take some calculated risks. And when I say calculated risks, it means in case whatever you're engaging in goes south, you're not totally wiped out. For example, I encourage entrepreneurs in that whichever amount of, if you have a certain amount of money, a dangerous risk take is to have 100% of the money, boom, and you put it into that business venture. So what I usually recommend is put in, let's say 30%, even better 25%. Test the waters to see if this business idea works. If it works, assuming you put in 20, I've been advising 30%, but as I'm thinking about it now, I feel 25% is even better. You put in 25%, meaning you risk 25% of your money as an example. And I mean, if it's a much bigger sum, then you could even risk less. But let's say 25%. You put it in. If that business venture doesn't work out, as an example, then you still have 3 other shots to take. But if you put in 100% and the business blows up, then you're 100% wiped out. So you put in 25%. If it works, you add in another 25%. If it doesn't work out, at least you have 2 other shots. If it works out, then you add another, and then you continue going. So that's the adventurer strategy. You take risks and you start now. And the thing is, there's a rabbi that I've been following of late. It's called Daniel Lapin. I would encourage you to check him out. So he was referring to how in the Old Testament, for most of the stories of these leaders you hear, whether it's Abraham or whoever it is, or Moses, you hear them being called upon to leave where they are at to go somewhere, because your future is not where you are at. It's where you should go or meant to go. And that means taking a risk, leaving your comfort zone here, just like those stories of the Old Testament, to go somewhere. And that's what I mean by taking a risk, new things. So you cannot stay in the same territory or doing the same old things and expect new results. So you have to venture somewhere. That nothing ventured, nothing gained, typically, most times at least. So that's the adventurous strategy. The second strategy is the continual strategy, meaning you remain in work setting to a lesser extent. You start working on your consultancy skills, as an example. So meaning you figure out a way to leverage. So whereas the adventurer looks for something totally new, the continuer, you remain working, as an example, you continue working in your current job. And then as you're doing that, you're doing, say, consulting in your area of work. So you're continuing the cycle of something. And this is something I typically highly recommend because it's less risk. And then, as I'm thinking about it now, so you can continue in the space where you already have a grounding or some level of knowledge, a strategic advantage, and then you can commit a percentage of resources you have here to venture into something here. So let's just suppose you get $1,000 from this engagement. So use that one, use 10% and risk into a venture. If it works out, fantastic. If it doesn't, at least you haven't missed much. I'll tell you, with the work that I'm doing, I have done 3 of those. The first risk, a smaller risk I took in something to partner with someone, the totally bombed. Then the second risk, a smaller investment with, this was with a cousin. It didn't work out. Then I used the same amount to test out another cousin of mine, and that returned, the returns were small, but at least showed some promise, and we still have some equipment. Then of late, I've engaged another person who is not a relative at all, and with a different model. And so far it is looking promising. So far, we are in the 2nd month and it's looking promising. But the point I'm making is, so from what I'm doing, committing a smaller percentage to test out different characters, okay, to see. So that other person, I first put in some amount, there was a promise, so I added in more after a promising start. So I like the continuous strategy because you're building onto something that you already know. For example, let me give you something very practical. So you have expertise in finance. So you could start consulting around financial management or accounting services. And then you've never done farming, so 10% of that goes into farming. So the consultants in finance is continuous strategy. And what I recommend, especially for consulting as an example, which is one of my favorite models, as you can imagine, is you can start it when you're still working. You build it on the side. And there's someone who was consulting with me one-on-one recently. I said, you know what, find someone to partner with, someone where you can, an organization that is already doing what you want to do and volunteer your time. So if you don't know how to do that, start to learn the business side of things. And when I say business side of things, that's extremely crucial because most people want to do the technical side and they forget the business side, the sales, the marketing, not just delivering the service to the client. So that's definitely one of my favorite models. So the searcher strategy here is more passive about their new interests and flexible if things do not work out, open-minded about what the future has. So meaning this is more or less related to the adventure, but here you're just checking out what else could be possible. But you're not as super active as the adventurer who jumps in. Here you're exploring options. And when I say more passive, their interests, And again, when I say flexible, if things do not work out, this is where smaller percentages work. But the searcher, when I say not as active, so the difference is this. So for the continuer, you're directly active, let's say in the consulting. The searcher, as I'm thinking about it, this is part of what I'm doing. I'm exploring, testing out certain person. I'm not so super active. Someone else who's very active doing business and then reports. I said there were 3, there were actually 4. And I'll tell you the 4th one. And the lesson I learned, by the way, from an entrepreneurial perspective. This is a big lesson for me, and it could be for you. So one of the models, at least based on what I'm testing now, when you're looking for someone to partner with, please note this is not financial advice. I'm just sharing my personal story. So there's this young person who came to me and said, okay, there's this other business, we could partner and then all that. So then that person asked me an excellent question, said, so how much would you want me to be paying you per month? So I was like, but that could be limiting. Let me keep it open. I trusted that person a lot, big time. And I said, you know what? No, it's okay. Let's see what, let's think. And for every profit we make, let's put 50% in the business. Let's not limit ourselves for now. And guess what? That opportunity did not go well. So this other opportunity that I'm working with, there's an expected return. So there has to be, someone needs to be, if you're to partner with someone, ideally you need to make sure that, at least from my personal experience, you need to attach a particular percentage or return on investment that you're expecting. I also have to add that please do not be too greedy when you're expecting the returns. You need to think about the number one, the money which will be put back in the business to grow. For growth, so it's part of the profits has to be put back into the business to grow. And then number two, the person who is working with you also needs to be motivated. It means they need to feel like they are benefiting something from that opportunity. Now, don't ask me the numbers. That's something we can do on a one-to-one basis. So now, back to that was a personal story to share with you. Now, for the searcher, again, you're open-minded about what the future has, but you're not super active. For the risks, you're more active. Here, you're not as active. So you're more passive. And here, of course, you are active, very actively generating revenue, for example, or in that business, so to speak. Okay, so that's the strategy. Those are the 3 strategies. Now, here are some areas to venture out, to consider. I've talked about consultancy, which is my favorite because it's low risk. And, once you have a certain kind of knowledge, it stays with you for the rest of your life. Talking about which. So consulting, once again, is you think about services. The other one is farming. For example, where I live here in Uganda, farming, our land is our goal, so to speak. I was talking to someone who is from Israel. This is what he told me. No, he's not from Israel. He's from Turkey. This is what he told me. He said, it's not about the oil, but all the gold, it's actually agriculture. That's where infinite opportunities are. So sometimes it's people who are from a different country who are able to see these opportunities. So if you are in an area that has good land, just know that that's an opportunity that you could explore to see how you can get or maximize gold from that opportunity. Trade and investments. So you could explore investments. I know some people here who are into investments. Trading is where you buy low and sell high. I know, or for example, there are people who do, I know someone who's making, I have a cousin brother who's made a fortune out of wholesale stuff. Daily income, smaller margins per day, but then the turnover, because it's daily, it multiplies. He has made a fortune. So that's really trading. So investments, you look for those investments. And what you can think about with investments, you have to think about, again, please note, I'm not your financial advisor. But when you think about investments, there are investments that are high risk, but high return. Then there are those moderate risk and also moderate return, then very low risk and also very tiny returns. So you can apportion your income or your monies accordingly. So again, for high risk, I would really have a smaller percentage right there. And then something in moderate investments, and then something in very low risk investments. Okay. So yes, Grace, you have some insights for us around, someone was saying that you have some great insights around the pie chart for investments. Please go ahead, Grace.
Okay, I'm not an expert, just to put it out there, but just from experience and what I have seen, so it's practice for any investment firm or even on an individual basis for people to have a guide when it comes to investment. So the pie chart model is basically for asset allocation. So you look at your resources as a pie chart. For example, if you have a certain figure or amount, that could represent the entire pie chart.
Grace, just hold on.
Yes, sure.
Give me a moment. Grace, kindly continue. Again, it's true, none of us is a financial advisor, and so is Grace. She's just sharing her own insights in this for you to consider. Please go ahead, Grace.
Okay, so I was talking about asset allocation. So basically using the pie chart to help you when you're deciding to what extent should I invest in a particular industry, in a particular maybe field and so forth. So each person has a different risk appetite. So some people might decide that, okay, I can, invest 60% in stocks because of, I've had maybe a good track record in the past and so forth. But somebody else might be a bit wary, so they will allocate perhaps 10% of their resources to stocks. So basically you split the pie chart in two portions, depending on how much of your resources you want to allocate to a specific area. So it could be real estate. You're saying, okay, real estate is maybe less risky, so perhaps I will allocate 40% of my resources to that. And then stocks, maybe 15%, and then bonds and fixed assets. So basically a number of investment options. You just basically choose which percentage of your resources will go to each of these. So this just helps you to have a diverse portfolio of investments so that you're not completely at risk when it comes to one industry. So for example, if something happened in maybe the real estate industry, you wouldn't exactly feel too much of a pinch because you're covered on, in other areas as well. Yeah, except of course for things like the pandemic, which really affect any business across the board. But technically, this kind of diversification helps to mitigate risks of that nature. Yeah, so that's just simply what I was sharing, how to do your asset allocation for investments. Yeah, thank you.
Good. Thank you so much, Grace. And I know that there are also there are some professionals who also advise, depending on your age, for example. We know, for example, stocks are riskier than say real estate. So in terms of risk, so they may have a bigger upside, but then of course they have a very high risk. So moderate risk, lower risk. And then depending on your age, there's some experts again advise, again, this is not me, I'm just sharing, not your financial advisor. So if you're younger, much younger, then when you say younger, let's say in your 20s, then it's okay to go a little aggressive into the riskier investments. Then the older you get, the further you should consider the less risky investments, so to speak. So there are those who, depending on the, they put in different age brackets. Again, financial advisors can advise. Well, Diana, I will respond during Q&A. Good question. So the lesson I'm putting out here is, one of us is a writer about chess, that's Grace. I should say, I do other things. And I'm like, no, come on, tell us. And now she's telling us how she writes about chess, was writing about Olympics. And now people are saying, yeah, I would want to know more. The point I'm making is, please talk about yourself. And it's also part of you expanding your possibilities during retirement. You might find lots of possibilities. Who knows? You could teach people how to play chess, and you could do this online, and that becomes an income revenue for you, and an income source for you. So one of the strategies, constantly talk about yourself. When you have a platform, don't just limit yourself. I do other things. No, talk about yourself in full. Great. I would want to know more myself. Great. Right, let's, and thanks again for sharing your wisdom. 7-step model for retirement planning. Let's go, let's roll. Number 1, retire. Define your retirement now. Give this as much thought as possible. So part of one of the things, one of the experts advise, look, if you have to think of a very safe investment, and for example, it could give you a certain return, and you need a certain amount for you to live comfortably, then you think of that amount. Let's just suppose it gives you 10% a year. So you think of how much you would need per month or per year to live, and then multiply that amount accordingly by 10 times, and then that should be the investment fund required to make sure that you get that 10%. So let me make it super simple. Let's just assume you need $1,000, or let's say $10,000 to live off per year. Okay, I want to keep the numbers smaller for easier understanding. And you can get 10% somewhere. So meaning you need an investment fund of 100,000, which you can stack away. And then every year you're guaranteed that 10%. So that's what I mean by thinking now. 2, you make a concrete plan. So what's your plan? This is what I want. Then what's the plan? What's the plan to get that $100,000? If we continue with that as an example, then start diversification today. Meaning you don't put all your eggs in one basket. Think of, okay, I need to put this percentage here. And we gave you an example earlier with Grace. Say I need this percentage here, I need this percentage here, to make sure that you diversify your risks, because not all industries are created equal and they have cycles. You find in this season, this industry is hot. In another industry, the other industry is hotter. So you diversify accordingly. Then step 4, partnerships. Form powerful partnerships with like-minded people. I wouldn't say like-minded people, I should say people with the same values, because you may be like-minded in terms of thought process, but are the values in alignment? Because if, for example, you find that someone is not trustworthy, then that's not going to be. Now, partnerships are very extremely powerful indeed. All I can say is choose carefully. Choose carefully, okay? Number 5 is health. Mind what you eat, mind your body. Because it does not matter what your retirement plan is. If you do not have good health, you're not going to enjoy it. I really love it when I see 80-year-olds running around with their grandchildren. That's one of the images I have in my head, in my mind, I beg your pardon. So I would love to be running around with my grandchildren in my advanced years. So keep yourself healthy, watch what you eat, and exercise as much as possible, because it's core foundation. Of course, manage your debt as much as possible. Make sure that you clear your debt as quickly as possible and minimize debt as much as possible, because then you might get sleepless nights if you do not execute that properly. And of course, number 7, finally, is action, action, action. All these things we are talking about, they won't mean a thing if you cannot get up and get going and take some form of action. So that is always a biggie, so to speak. That's always big time, so to speak. All right. So before we talk about mastery, do these 7 steps make sense? So now let's talk about the mastery. This is a chart I would encourage you to, you can actually take a screenshot of to help you scribble something quickly. And that is when you're initiating projects, think about this. So this project, say, okay, this activity, assuming you want to start the farming as an example, resources that I already have or enablers could be that you have the land. Potential blockages could be that you're far away from where the agricultural activity is going to be. Possible solutions could be that you hire a farm manager whom you trust, who is skilled and you trust at the same time. Projection location, okay. I beg your pardon, project location should be no, this is just projection, I beg your pardon. Projection and location, you're projecting that you will be generating $1,000 a month, and the location is Chanamkaka, and the start date is that. So this gives you a quick snapshot to think through and plan for your projects. Okay. All right. And again, please remember to reflect on this. And that is, what did you find most useful in this presentation, and how are you going to implement the lessons moving forward in your life and career/business? All right. Okay. All right. So I've been reflecting deeply about the subject of retirement, but there is also what I would call the spiritual dimension of retirement. See, retirement, first of all, the word itself, it sounds like, I mean, you're moving away from something, either that comes to an end or something that you don't like to finally do something that you like. Usually that's what we associate retirement with. But when I think about the spiritual dimension of retirement is, in God's economy, I don't see the word retirement, because when you think about it, God created us to be here on planet Earth to make this world a better place as part of our purpose. Therefore, if you really find your purpose, if you really find something that you're meant to do, and God has assigned you that package, has assigned you that portion, in the Bantu language is what you call Olubimbi, meaning they have given you your portion. So, and that portion never ends. So if you have your purpose, you can never retire from your purpose. So as I think about like the work that I do, I don't see myself retiring. Retire from what? Because retire from transforming lives? Absolutely not. So I may scale down in terms of the things I do in the space that I'm working them in, but I don't see myself retiring from my purpose, because once God has given you a role to play or something to do, then I don't see you retiring. So most people who, when they think about retiring, is that they're moving up from something they don't like to finally do something that they like. And I'm saying, no. There's always human beings, God's children, there are always needs in God's economy requiring your engagement. Therefore, it's not just about retirement, it's really about you engaging yourself fully, finding your purpose, and looking for human beings to serve, looking for God's children to serve. And talking about service, one of the best ways, of course, is look for the needs out there. What do God's children truly need, to use the rabbi's words? What do the God's children really need? And then you go serve them. And that service never ends, my friend. So whereas we are talking about retirement in the context of how we understand it in the typical world, I believe that in the spiritual world, there's no retirement, because you retire when you pass on. But when you are still alive, then you still have a role to play in this world, add value to make a difference in this world, whatever that is. And therefore, your job is find that, then you'll always be fully alive and awake and useful and a value-adding person. Because the people I was talking about who live for 3 to 5 years after retirement, it's because they have really not engaged the spiritual dimension of retirement. Because if they knew that this is my purpose, I still have so much to live, I have so much to give. I told you of Mama Maria, who is always making a difference. I mean, she's in her 80s, but she's so alive. She's like a 20-something-year-old person, because she is playing by the spiritual rules, not the physical rules of humanity. So that is my take on the spiritual dimension of retirement. Oh, Lord. And I've never had someone call it the spiritual dimension of retirement, but that's it on the corner. Emily says, wow, that's very powerful. Find your purpose and do it till God calls you home. Absolutely. That's my take on that. So Emily asked 50% in stocks. Is it a good investment return in Uganda? Which would be the best companies? It's also long-term. Now, I would say the couple of thoughts I have around that. Number one is, of course, I wouldn't, unless you're still super young and you're really aggressive, want to go for the aggressive model, then I wouldn't put the 50% in stocks, because they are also not, that was Diana's question, okay. They are not also as, I will tell you, there is a company I put in here in you. There are some companies that have turned out well, some have not. So is it a good investment return? No, you know what, I would say that generally speaking, if you are to invest in a couple, if you are to diversify your portfolio, then you should be able to get a better return on average. I know that the international levels or numbers, they're about 12% per year on average. Now, which is still better than, say, just putting money in your savings account. So if you diversified, generally speaking, you'd get a better return than just putting it in the bank account. Now, I would definitely, how do you call it? Get financial advice. When you say which one is a better company, I wouldn't be in position to tell you right now. This is why you have to go to an investment advisor, someone who can give you details. But also when you're investing in companies, the one thing I learned from Warren Buffett is not just looking at the numbers, but who are the people running that business. You trust the people running that business, that for the long haul, you get a better return. But also, just remember, indeed, for stocks, they're a long-term play. I'll give you an example. One of the companies I invested in, I decided to stay long-term, and now I'm getting some fairly good dividend checks, while in another company it didn't turn out to be. So again, you have to play the long term. It can't be a short-term game. You have to look at the long-term game plan. But knowing what I know now, looking back, if I had been consistent and saying, okay, let me put money there every month, buy some stocks in these companies that I love, then I would have had a much better return than just putting money at once and then just wait. That's all I can say. Then I remember the other question that Goretti asked, is real estate trade or an investment? I would say it's mainly an investment. So unless, possibly if that language is there of, you buy it here and then immediately sell it off here. But either way, you're putting the money in there and you're going to get a return on your investment. So it's mainly an investment, because when you think about real estate, it could be that you are putting up apartments, or even if you're a real estate developer, I mean, you put in so much money, you put in, let's say, $300,000, and you're going to sell condominiums, or you're going to resell off that house and to get 400,000 to get a 33% or something like that. Then it's really an investment, and it's one of those plays that it's one of those investments which, if well done, if well put together, can give you, is relatively safe, and it can also give you bigger returns. The one tip that I also got recently, which made a lot of sense, from someone in the real estate space, this is what they told me. They said, look, they said, okay, let me put it this way. So rather than just put, say, a unit and get rent, so according to his experience, at least here in Uganda, when you do, say, serviced apartments, or meaning you are furnished apartments, I beg your pardon, he did for me the numbers, and the numbers look like you can, if well done and well marketed, you will get your investment much, much faster than just, say, putting up apartments and people are renting, they're giving you rental income. So if it's a furnished apartment or unit, you'll get your return much faster than when it is just a plain apartment and just renting out. Okay. Oh, the other thing I forgot to mention, one of this investment club, it's one of the best decisions I made. Please, because when you're in an investment club, it really forces you to save. So you have a certain amount that you put out, and I have to also add, make sure that you're in an investment club with people with similar values, and that you have great, solid leadership. So investment clubs are also a fantastic vehicle for you to prepare for your retirement. I cannot emphasize that enough, because I've seen it, at least in my personal life, and yeah. Oh, someone was talking about agriculture earlier. So what I know about agriculture is that it is labor intensive, so to speak. So you need to pay attention. You need to get either you have to be there yourself, or you have to get someone that you truly trust to be there to pay attention. Otherwise, you won't get much, because I'll tell you, there are some, okay, it's time, wow. So I'll tell you, there's someone who said, just would come and say, we've done these 50 acres of maize, and then he would just look outside and say, 50 acres of maize, fantastic. So when it comes to harvest time, this other fellow, they harvested what was in the center of that farm, and when this fellow came, they discovered that a lot had been taken away. So just to note that, agriculture pays, but at the same time, you have to pay extreme attention. Susan said, farming is tricky with climate change. You have to pick your enterprise carefully and ensure you have a good manager. Absolutely. Well put, Susan Atiang. I can't agree with you further than that. Great. With agriculture, you need to start now. Don't wait to get to 60 and start venturing. Absolutely. Start testing things out now. Otherwise, when you wait till you're 60, by then people will lie to you. Start small, make smaller risks that you can get to that level then. All right? Great.